Encouraging, empowering, inspiring each other on this journey of faith. United in purpose, sisters in love we are. Women World Leaders.
Hi there, and welcome to the Women World Leaders podcast. My name is Kelly Williams Hale, and I'm your host today on Celebrating God's Grace. I'm an author, speaker, and mentor helping women discover the purpose God has for them and embrace their divine destiny. This week, we're going to talk about grace, specifically the freedom of grace. But first, what does grace mean? I've heard it my whole life, mostly attributed to my accident-prone self. When I walk through a doorway, swinging my arms, inevitably my hand bashes against the doorjamb. In my mind, I hear, "Good job, Grace." Or when I walk down a sidewalk or down the hallway in the house with absolutely no obstacles, I will trip and stumble over a speck of dust. Again, I think, grace. But the grace I want to talk about today is God's grace. The grace He extends to us despite and in spite of our failures and shortcomings. I can tell you it has taken me many, many years to fully understand the amazing wonder of God's grace. It's by His grace that any of us still walk this earth. His grace allows us to wake up each day and attempt, in our weak and self-centered way, to go about the daily business of living. And it's by His grace that we are forgiven over and over and over again when we fall short or fall down. Maybe there is some correlation to my definition of grace and God's version. But God's grace is what we must remember when someone causes us harm or in some way disappoints us. His grace is what we extend to others. But we should also extend it to ourselves. A few years ago, I had the word grace tattooed on the inside of my wrist. It's a reminder for me to extend grace to others, and then also I can glance down and be reminded to give myself grace. Have you ever messed up so badly you wondered, how could God use me after that? I sure have. And I remember so vividly the day the Lord reminded me of His grace. I was sound asleep after attending the first day of a women's conference. You see, God was calling me to ministry to serve women who felt like their past disqualified them from His purpose. And I heard an audible voice whisper, "My grace is sufficient." Man, I immediately sat upright and grabbed my Bible and found this verse, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 9 through 10. "And He has said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I will rather boast about my weaknesses, that the power of Christ may dwell in me." That was really the beginning for me. The beginning of my understanding of the grace Jesus gives me. He gives it to all of us. His grace saves us. That's definitely something worth celebrating. I believe it's so difficult to comprehend because it goes against everything the world tells us. We are told to treat others the way they treat us, which really sometimes is ugly and mean. So should we then be ugly and mean back to them? Of course not. Is that what Jesus did when He was persecuted and called names? Absolutely not. Jesus loved the haters despite their hate for Him. Accepting God's grace is understanding that there is nothing we can do to earn it. There is nothing we can do to make God love us more or less. He loves us unconditionally. If you have children, you can relate to this. Like the prodigal son, our children can literally walk away from us, and yet we welcome them back with open arms every single time. As God's children, regardless of the mess we get into and the mistakes we made, God loves us, period. I don't recall a lot of my childhood, but I do remember how I felt in certain situations. I remember feeling like I needed to make people happy. I felt like it was my responsibility to smooth over hurt feelings. I needed to dissipate the tension that hung in the air after arguments in my family. As the oldest of 4, I wanted to protect my younger brothers. I felt like I could make them better, make things better for them. I was the doer. I helped, my mom around the house because it made her happy. I did my homework and helped in the classroom because it made the teachers happy. I was that polite and helpful little girl. It was my job to take care of everybody. I was what they call a peacemaker. I know now my natural personality is to be a peace lover, but I also learned that keeping the peace helped other people. So I really was taught to be a good girl. I overheard people tell my mom, "Boy, your Kelly sure is a good girl." Later in high school, I remember being at a picnic for my mom's work, and I overheard someone tell her, "Gosh, Kelly is so well adjusted." It stuck with me. I was all of like 16 or 17 and felt like that was a great compliment. I'm sure I was very demure on the outside, all happy and friendly and helpful. But inside, I was developing a not so great case of false humility. Have you ever felt that, where you get praised and feel like you are doing a great job? Again, hearing that Kelly is so well adjusted did give me a sense of, that false humility, because I thought it was on my own strength. In fact, it was a few years later that I discovered in counseling that I controlled people by not allowing them to be responsible. What? I just did what needed to be done. If you had asked me, I certainly wouldn't have defined myself as controlling. But when I was taking away people's responsibility, that's exactly what I did. I was controlling the outcome. If someone couldn't do a task, well, it wasn't going to do itself. So I would pick up the ball and run. I still struggle with that doing part of existing, making things happen in my own strength. And I have allowed accolades to determine my worth. Yet I could be a bump on a log all day, every day, and God would not love me any more or less than He does when I make myself crazy taking care of everything and everyone. What a lesson. God's grace allows us to be who He created us to be. God's grace allows us to let other people be who God created them to be. Taking care of everything sometimes is necessary, especially as a mom. But when we feel like we have to make things happen on our own strength, and then kind of feel like our self-worth is wrapped around that accomplishment, we take away the grace that God gave us, that Jesus died for. The love He has for us is simply because He created us. We can't earn His love by doing anything more for Him. We can't behave in any way that will make Him love us more or less. He simply does. Freedom from our past and the mistakes we've made is directly related how and when we grasp this truth. When we find freedom in God's grace, knowing that He loves us even in our weakness, that He loves us in spite of our mistakes, we can release the need to control. We can surrender to His plan for us. We can offer grace to others and love people where they're at. Grace is given. It's up to us to accept it. Thanks for listening to Women World Leaders podcast. Join us each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as we explore together God's extravagant love and your courageous purpose. Visit our website at www.womenworldleaders.com to submit a prayer request, register for an upcoming event, and support the ministry. From His heart to yours, we are Women World Leaders. All content is copyrighted by Women World Leaders and cannot be used without express written